Hey guys, welcome to Solo ReacTalk. Tonight I am going to be reacting to Legacy of Kain, Rahab, a character study done by Strictly Fantasy. If you can check out my previous reactions to my other Legacy of Kain reactions, remember the playlist card will be at the top. Just click on it and be able to access them. Okay, let's start. 3, 2, 1, go.
Raziel.
Rahab, you have adapted well to your environment, for one so maladjusted.
Do not mock me, Raziel. You of all of us should respect the power bestowed by a limitation overcome.
Is he like a merman? He looks like a... yeah, like a merman.
Out of all of Kain's vampire sons, I find it interesting and a little disappointing that Rahab should be left out of one of the most pivotal moments in Soul Reaver 2. When the Seraphim attack Janos Wardren's retreat in a plot to assassinate the last living ancient, the human Rahab is strangely absent. In this scene, we see all of Raziel's human brothers, including Terrell, Duma, Zephon and Malchiah, but not Rahab. There is no doubt that he was part of their elite group, but it's impossible to know for sure where he could have been during Janos' murder. A possible in-game explanation is that he had other orders, perhaps leading the rear guard to cover the Seraphim commander's retreat. In any case, we don't see him in Soul Reaver 2 until after Raziel chases the men back to their stronghold. By the time our protagonist arrives, Rahab has seemingly rejoined his comrades, fighting alongside his brother Duma in the main hall. Ultimately, the developers have clarified that his absence was due to technical limitations. Rahab should have been present at Janos' death, but during the making of the game, the developers ran into a performance issue with having too many characters on screen at the same time, so they were forced to cut one. Supposedly, they picked Rahab at random, but I put his exclusion down to Rahab simply being the middle child. Due to his placement in the Seraphim rankings, and as the fourth of Kain's vampire lieutenants to be raised.
He looks cool. I mean, look at the what do they call them? The seahorses, and you know, the armor, and he just looks cool, really.
He is naturally the easiest to overlook, which is a shame because in my opinion, he has a very striking design that I wish we got to see more of in Soul Reaver 2. Rahab's appearance shown in the chapter house alludes to the eventual forms he takes as a vampire. He is depicted with a trident instead of the sword he wields against Raziel, implying a range of combat skills. Along with his armour marked with seahorses, a distinctive blue colour scheme, and curved horned helmet. These embellishments are clearly evocative of both his devolution into a shark-like sea creature and his connection to water. His name too holds significance. In biblical mythology, Rahab is an angel, also commonly referred to as the Prince of the Primordial Sea. When it comes to vampire folklore, many of the old stories cited similar methods to slay a vampire. Usually this would involve driving a wooden stake through the heart, decapitation, inflaming.
Yeah, but that Raziel didn't seem like he was staking the, you know, the wood into the vampire's heart. It looked different, you know, the... I don't want to talk about this further. If you saw what I saw, then you know what I'm thinking, okay? Yeah, that was...
Or exposing the creatures to direct sunlight. While not all vampires were defenseless against water, in some tales, they were unable to cross rivers and seas. Full immersion in water for these types were often fatal. Legacy of Kain took this a step further by explaining that water went as far as to burn a vampire's skin, like strong acid did to humans. They couldn't be submerged without suffering tremendous pain before succumbing to their wounds and dying a horrible death.
I knew my opponent's weaknesses, having suffered them myself. Physical wounds are fleeting. A vampire's immortal flesh begins to close as soon as it is cleaved. Vampires need only fear those wounds that impale or inflame. Water scorches like acid, and fledglings are devastated by sunlight's touch.
It says a lot about Rahab's character that he was able to push himself to overcome one of his race's greatest weaknesses. Based on his appearance in Soul Reaver's opening cinematic, it looks as if Rahab had already adapted to water even at this point in time, before Raziel's execution. In this particular cutscene, he's at least as tall as Raziel and keeps his black hair in a ponytail, but notice his scaly blue skin and the gills on his neck. Lead artist for the series, Daniel Kabuko, has shared some interesting insights into Rahab's development and the possible motivation behind him seeking to overcome his vulnerability to water. In exchange for their absolute loyalty, Kain gave to each of his sons lands to govern. The hypothesis is that Rahab felt bitter over the land he received, especially as it was teeming with lakes and rivers. The humans who dwelled in his territory had found refuge by using the terrain to their advantage. They hid behind waterfalls, moats, and built great cities beyond his clan's reach.
Clever, very clever.
Presumably, Rahab was annoyed by the human cattle who dared to think themselves safe in his domain, and so, driven by a desire to...
I don't like the fact that Strictly Fantasy said cattle. You know, seeing humans as cattle. I don't feel right about that. But I understand, you know, vampires, they think they're higher than us. You know, they use us for food.
Make the humans pay for their impotence. Rahab began experimenting on his body. He sought to direct the journey his evolution would take. In Blood Omen 1, Kain could resist rain and snowfall for short periods of time by collecting power-ups from blood fountains. When Rahab first started exposing himself to water, he may well have went about using similar methods, perhaps even casting water breathing and protection spells over his body. It must have been a long and painful process, one which likely began with Rahab immersing and then burning before drinking blood to heal. During these torturous exercises, I suspect he might have even reached a level where he could telekinetically drink blood while bathing in water at the same time. For years, perhaps centuries, he'd burn, heal, until one day it happened. He adapted. His evolution finally granted to him the gift he long desired. To an empire of blood-sucking parasites, unable to swim, the newly evolved Rahab and his clan would have been invaluable to Kain, for these soldiers could now go places where no other in Kain's army could. Upon acquiring his gills, I imagine Rahab would be quick to present them to his master in his royal court, hoping to gain his lord's favour. Indeed, as a vampire, Rahab was exceptionally loyal towards Kain, and prideful of his status as one of his sons.
Kain said you would come.
You speak with the murderer?
You would do well to mind your blasphemous tongue.
What more did he tell you?
That you would destroy me.
I will indeed. But tell me, before I tear your soul from its moorings, do you know what we were before Kain spawned us?
Human.
Seraphan, Rahab, the antithesis of all we ever believed.
Does it matter? We were lost. He saved us.
Saved us?
What do you mean he saved you? You were dead. Okay. This guy really is loyal.
From what?
From ourselves.
In his vampire life, Rahab was quite composed and calm-headed. Even in his devolved state, he retained much of his dutiful and confident personality. He was not surprised by the fact that he was a Seraphan in his former life, and viewed his resurrection as a vampire as an act of redemption. Whether this was because Kain had previously informed him about his fanatical past, or whether it was because he simply did not care when learning the truth from Raziel, we may never know. Either way.
But so far he looks, you know, better than the previous vampire lords that we have seen. You know, what was his name again? Not Zephon, but yeah, Zephon was also looking really hideous. Yeah, Milakai, yes, him, the guy with the body parts and the organs and everything connected as one, you know, to make a whole new body for him because his skin, not his skin, yeah, no, not the skin, the flesh was, you know, coming off. So, you know, he has to keep on replacing his skin or his organs or anything else with new body parts and stuff like that. Yeah, that guy was nasty. Zephon, his final form as that insectoid kind of creature, was also nasty. So at least with this guy, Rahab, he looks okay. Yeah.
Way, Rahab dismissed his Seraphan heritage as unimportant. He chose to stay loyal to Kain, regardless. You know, it's interesting to see the contrast between Rahab and Raziel's opinions over once being Seraphan, where Rahab accepts the information that he had been a vampire hunter without protest. Raziel resents Kain for turning them into defiled creatures, as he believes they were once members of a noble and righteous faction. Yet funny enough, Raziel's opinion swings completely in the other direction in Soul Reaver 2 upon finding out how monstrous these men really were. All that reverence he held for them came crashing down the instant they murdered his mentor, which just goes to show how volatile Raziel's views are when faced with the truth.
Yeah, it's kind of double standards there. And I mean, like, what do you expect, Raziel? What do you really expect? What do you think vampire hunters do? Do you think they just sing Kumbaya and then the vampires go to sleep or they turn to dust? No, it's violent. It's bloody. You know, you have to kill the vampire. Make sure that it's dead. So, yeah. Raziel, wake up.
By the end of Soul Reaver 2, and during the course of Defiance, Raziel's opinions concerning the Seraphan and the vampires now align more closely with Rahab's, just before he was killed. It's ironic, and a little sad, because Raziel from Defiance might have thought twice about murdering the devolved Rahab, who seemed much more reasonable and down to earth when compared to the likes of his other siblings. In the end, Rahab was right about the brothers being lost as Seraphan, and in many ways, his new existence as a vampire was a form of salvation from his past life, a sentiment Raziel would eventually come to agree with. Although Rahab was usually a calm individual, he was not above petty anger. He took it personally when Raziel insulted him for having been maladjusted, a comment which seems to ring true towards Rahab's hubris and resolve. By overcoming the vampire's natural susception towards water, Rahab had gained Kain's favour for a time, moving up the chain of value. This would drive the others into jealousy, including Raziel. What you have to understand is that the relationship between the clan leaders was often in flux, with each vying for Kain's approval, dominance over the others, and using alliances where necessary to strengthen their positions.
Okay, but what if you are not interested in gaining the approval of Kain? You know, what if you just stay as you are, you just keep to yourself and your vampire clan, and you know, you live a happy life, if I can say that. What's going to happen to you? Is Kain going to be saying, you know, you're a failure, you're not really giving me any results, or you're not improving yourself, so I'm cutting you off, or something like that? What's going to happen to you, you know, if you don't want to vie for power and attention from Kain? I'm just wondering.
The era following Raziel's execution, Rahab and Zephon were likely uneasy allies, holding back their forces while letting the main conflict between the Terillium and Dumahim play out. Of course, when Rahab saw an opportunity to strike, he did so, moving against the Terillium. In fact, there is evidence to suggest that a part of Rahab's territory within the Drowned Abbey was once occupied by Tyrell's spawn. The figures beside the stained glass windows on the outside of Rahab's chamber depict his older brother's clan, hinting that this was once Terillium territory that had been invaded. Although these claims are unsubstantiated, the idea is that the Terillium took the area from the humans who designed the Chapel of Light, and in turn, the Rahabim took it from them.
Once a sanctuary against the vampire menace, this abbey has been drowned by the deluge spilling from this wounded land. Your brother Rahab and his brood, devastated even by the feeble rays of Nosgoth's sun, overcame their vulnerability to water and retreated from the surface. Now they haunt these ruins and glide in the darkness of its stagnant depths.
From what I gather, Rahab was confident in his clan's unique abilities, and knew none of his brothers could take back any lands that the Rahabim flooded. So he sought to expand his territory as much as possible, flooding areas with dams, locks, and destroying dikes. When Raziel came for Rahab's soul, he glided from pillar to pillar, carefully avoiding the touch of water while contending with the amphibious Rahabim, who were essentially predators of the deep. Rahab's chamber was well defended, and Raziel was only able to breach it thanks to his ability to shift into the spectral realm, where water is insubstantial. Before I get into their fight, I'd like to bring up some more interesting points we learn from the conversation between the two brothers. Rahab claimed to have spoken with Kain, who had forewarned him of Raziel's arrival. It's unclear when this conversation took place, but it sounds recent, and I think we can take this to mean that Rahab was the only lieutenant whom Kain maintained contact with. This goes back to what I was saying earlier about Rahab not going completely insane and actually having a good head on his shoulders, to the point where Kain felt like he could have a frank discussion with him. I get the impression that with Terrell having vanished and Duma being obsessed with power, Rahab became something of a confidant for Kain. It shows a level of trust for the one lieutenant who maintained both his composure and loyalty after all these years. Even when Kain told him that he would perish, Rahab accepted his fate willingly. Indeed, Rahab had every chance to flee upon learning of what was likely a vision seen in the chronoplast, but nevertheless, he decided to stay. As the battle between the brothers got underway, Rahab fired projectiles at Raziel and lashed out at him with his teeth. Noticing 8 stained glass windows on the wall and breaking them one by one with his projectile ability, Raziel was able to trigger the sundial mechanism and unleash deadly beams of sunlight upon Rahab. I don't know about you, but this was probably one of the easiest boss battles I've ever played on PS1, and that's saying something. I mean, for me, it usually lasts anywhere between a few seconds to a minute, as long as I don't screw up and let Raziel fall into the water. Despite Rahab's invulnerability, it turns out his evolution came at a terrible price. Most adult vampires could cope with Nosgoth's weak daylight, which was blackened by the smoke belched into the sky from the vampire's smokestacks. But Rahab couldn't even withstand that anymore. Exploiting this deficiency, Raziel killed him, letting the sunlight pour in. Given his final words, I think Rahab was content in his last few moments. He resigned himself to his destruction, knowing full well all this played out, just as his master predicted. Now armed with his brother's ability to swim, Raziel turned his sights to Nosgoth's northern wastes.
Well, at least his death was not very, gory and bloody like Micaiah as well as Zephon. Zephon was burnt alive. Micaiah was, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, he was turned into mincemeat, if I can say that. Ew.
And to his brother, Duma. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and tell me what you think about Rahab's character in the comments below. Personally, I like the individuality of each of the lieutenants, despite having a shared history. In particular, it's nice to see how Rahab retained much of his ideals after his devolution. He accepted his place as one of Kain's loyal followers, and unlike some of his other brothers, never once sought to betray his master. For more Legacy of Kain content, do subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.
Okay guys, that was Legacy of Kain, Rahab, a character study by Strictly Fantasy. Rahab was not the problem child. He wasn't the problem child, he wasn't the drama child, he was the good boy, if I could say that, when he was a human, he was the good boy. When he became a vampire, he's still the good boy, very loyal to Kain. He didn't cause any issues. As Strictly Fantasy said that, he was the sane, one of the very few sane brothers. He didn't go mad with power or, drunken with power. And he was really a staunch supporter of Kain and a very loyal one. he even believes that, you know, Kain saved him from you know, his past as a human being. You know, he saved him from what he used to be, and he made him better. Hey man, it's all up to you. You know, Rahab, if you believe that it's nice being the way you are and what you are, then I really can't complain with you. You know, that's your own decision. And I really like his form, this merman kind of shark creature. Really, it's cool. Really, compared to what I've seen so far, especially with the past two lieutenants, his form is so good. It's so good, and I like the water aspect of it as well. And like I said, even when he died, it looked very peaceful. Well, he died painfully, yes, but I mean, it's not as gory and as bloody and as, you know, painful looking compared to Zephon and Malchiah. So yeah, his death was clean, if I can say that. And yeah, like the vampires really adapted to all these different environments, you know, to defeat the humans and then corral them as their cattle and drink their blood and dominate over them. It's really terrifying, and you know, for me, because I support anything that's human. Like, if you've been watching my previous reactions, anything that's related to humanity, I am always there to support them. I'm there to to give them that kind of support, even though they lost many times over. But still, you know, I want the vampires gone. But I've been told that Nazgûl needs the vampires to exist. I won't accept that. Anyone who says that, I already consider you a vampire worshipper. But yeah, I guess maybe I'll have to just accept. Guys, that's it. That's it for tonight. If you liked the video, remember to give me a like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Click on the notification bell if you can be up to date with my latest videos. And I will see you next week Friday. Okay? Bye-bye.